Okay, now I got Dr. Parsa Mohebi from California. He's a member of the ISH Society, and you're part of the FUE committee, so you develop studies about FUE, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And being a member of the FUE committee and doing FUE, you also do FUT. What do you think about, there is a space still for FUT. What do you think about as the future of the hair restoration?
Well, I think, at least I can say from my own practice, we have been doing more and more FUE. FUT is going to be there for many people. It's a good option. We've been doing it for years with good results, but FUE seems like it's taking ground and it becomes more popular as we go forward.
What do you think? Just because the donor, because now with the new techniques, we can have great donors doing FUT too. So, but the thing is, the logistic of FUE sounds more attractive to beginners, doctors, because he don't need a big stuff. And, well, of course, you have probably better scar or no scar at all in the donor area. But that depends of the technique. But then we come with the difficult situation. Smaller punch, leave smaller scars and better heal. So probably invisible scars at all. But then the transaction rate could be bigger. Do you think that we still have a place for FUT or combining FUT and FUE to have more hair? Because the patient that's under around 20s or 30s doing FUE, in the future that we need more hair. What do you think about that?
Well, I personally have not been combining FUE and FUT. I think FUE is good enough for most cases, and I did not find myself in a situation that I have to use FUT in addition to FUE. Occasionally, we have to do bigger number of grafts, and we do two-day procedure. So we do two-day back-to-back of FUE. We make it up to like 4,000 grafts per 2 sessions, which is not difficult. And FUE might have some other advantages that we will become more aware of it in the future, especially like removing hair from beard area, that we do a lot of them, and for people who don't have enough reserve on the back. So body hair, beard hair, which is giving us, which is a new source of hair that we didn't have before.
Of course, it's amazing. But I was kind of impressive in this workshop because some doctors, they're removing FUE from the higher areas and the side and even the vertex, areas that we for sure, we know that in the future they will be bald. And they say that's no problem because the patients agree they will have transitory hair for 5-10 years. They are happy because they are young. And then this hair maybe they will lose anyway. So I'm not so comfortable about that. What do you think about that situation?
Well, if you want to do FU, you have to know how to do it, and you have to think long term. Yeah, short term, you remove hair from anywhere and it will grow and patient's happy, but 10 years from then, that person is still your patient. They will come back to you, they will ask you, hey, what's going on with my hair? So if the patient's not selected properly, FUE in the wrong hands could be a bad procedure. So FUE is good if it's done by the right doctor, with the right techniques.
And of course, definitely. What about preserving the donor or thinking about the future? What do you think about getting the most safest area, the donor, when the patient are young? You be a little bit more restrictive to the safest area. And then with the time, we can define better which of the safe zone, which will be the extension of the baldness. And then you can progress and go to areas that initially you are not sure enough, but then you can be sure and you can get that hairs.
Right. Well, again, it has to do with the expertise of the doctor. With FUE, especially with bigger FUE sessions, mega sessions or giga session FUEs, it's inevitable to go out of the safe zone. But if you do that, and sometimes we have to do it, you have to keep it at minimum, and you have to know which hair to use in which areas. I have done it to go slightly to the areas that I'm not sure what's going to happen, but In those cases, I make sure that I use the real permanent zone hair to the hairline and behind it. And if I need to do anything on the top and crown, I use on those questionable areas.
Definitely. So you use the more unsafe or we don't know hair in the area that is less sensitive, less critical. Perfect. That's a wonderful approach. I totally agree. And tell me something. We hear in this meeting many times that, well, if we got some transaction, the transaction is not a problem because the hair will regrow. But nobody presented a study, concrete numbers that correspond to that opinion. What do you personally think about that? And you are doing studies about that.
We are doing studies about transection and what's going to happen to the hair that is transected, both on the recipient side and then on the donor area. We don't know yet, but we can presume that some of those grafts will grow back on the recipient area, especially with the newer techniques of FUE that we are limiting the depth of the punches, so the transected hair is more viable. So we're leaving us, if there is any transection, it's not going to be deep transection. Superficial transection is having a more chance of the hair growing out back again in the donor area, and it could be harvested in the future again.
Yes, that's great. But we have to know the future probably, but probably some hair will be lost, right? So the thing is, what I like doing the FUT is that we go to the microscope, we can dissect this hair, so it's safer. But of course, I agree with you that there is a open space for FUE, and maybe in the future most of the procedure will be FUE and less will be FUT. But we have to get both on hands. One thing that makes me curious about the FUE, we are decreasing the size of the punch incision. In the beginning it was 1 millimeter or even more, and then for 0.9, 0.8. And 0.8 we can get part of the follicular unit, subfollicular unit. So we are dividing the follicular units, we are moving less hair per graft, per follicular unit. But we can get more follicular units and we get better heal in the donor. But at the same time, it costs more for the patient. So it's kind of a ratio. The patient will get better heal in the donor, but we are moving less hair. So what do you think it will be the point, the balance about that?
Where to stop, right. Well, I have been, like many other people, I've been reducing the size of my punches in the last few years. I'm down to like size 9 or 8, 0.8 millimeter, 0.9 millimeter, which I'm very comfortable, and I can remove even bigger grafts like FUEs with more number of hair, 3 hairs, sometimes 4 hairs. I'm hearing that people are using like 0.7, 0.6. I just don't see the point of going lower because the healing is good enough. Even with 0.9, the healing, we don't see any scar, almost non-existent. Hypopigmentation is something that I haven't seen probably for the last year, in the last set of patients that I've been doing with the smaller punch. So there is not much benefit of going to 0.7, 0.6, 0.5 maybe. It's not a race. It's not like the smaller the better. Sometimes you have to stop at some point. I think 0.9 is reasonable. I may use 0.8 at some point. But yeah, if I end up getting less number of hair per graft, it's not good for patient. And it's not necessarily improving my healing. My healing is good enough now already. So there should be some science behind everything. So I think patients shouldn't just trust doctors to say, oh, I'm using a small punch and it's necessarily better. It's not better. You probably lose some hair value, as you said.
Okay, I totally agree with you. Thank you very much, and we are willing to see these papers that publish the studies about the survival rates in FUE. And okay, keep talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.